Hey guys, welcome back to a new video, and in this video we're going to create a mail search app using RxJava. So throughout this video we will try to learn about scheduler, which is the most important thing if you want to do asynchronous programming with RxJava. Let's get started with our video. First thing first, go to my GitHub repository, download the initial project and open up into your Android Studio. This will contain all of the dependencies that we will use throughout our video. Open your Gradle script, build.gradle.kit is of module app level. So we have dependencies over here. First we have retrofit dependency. Retrofit is a third party library using which we can perform backend communication. Then we have two dependency. This dependency is actually used to initialize our view model in composables. Then we have serialization dependency, lifecycle dependency. This lifecycle dependency is actually used to provide view model lifecycle. And lastly we have coil image loading library. So using URL you can download image with this library. Scroll up, we have few plugins like serialization plugin, Kotlin parcelize and KAPT, Kotlin annotation processor. In build.gradle.kts it is pretty much same. When you create a new project you will get all these plugins by default. Just close it, and now it's time to show you the API that I'm gonna consume in this video. So let me just drag this thing from my second screen. So this is the website, the MailDB. This will provide us few free REST APIs, and this is the API that I'm gonna consume for searching. So this is our JSON response. I'm gonna first copy this response, and corresponding to this JSON object I'm gonna create my model classes. Just drag this thing to my second screen, and now it's time to open up our package structure. And in this video we're gonna use MVVM architecture, model view model. So responsibility of model is to get data either from local or remote data source. Once it get data, do some processing, it will give this information to our view model, and view model contains all of our business logic. Once our business logic is applied, it will expose this information to our view, and view is actually used to show you the user interface. It's very easy. So first let's begin our package structure. First we have model package, then we have view model package, and lastly we have our view. Because this UI and this main activity is a view, that's why I'm gonna put these two things in my view package. Okay, so now it's time to begin with our model, and in this model I'm gonna create a package and call this DTOs. So DTOs is nothing but a model classes which is actually used to transfer data from your backend to frontend or from your backend to your mobile device. So right click new. This is a plugin that I'm gonna use here, Kotlin data class file from JSON. You can get this plugin very easily by going to this file, go to this Android Studio. In the settings we have plugin, and in this plugin you can simply type here Kotlin JSON to Kotlin class. So you can simply install this plugin and restart your Android Studio, and after that when you right click on it, go to new, you will have this plugin over here. So click on it, just paste your JSON response, and I'm gonna call this mail response. Just press enter. So we have here our mail response, and this mail response contain mails, which is a list of mail, and this is our mail which contain all of the information regarding our mail. I'm gonna rename this thing from mail to mail DTO because it actually represents a data transfer object, that's why. Okay, so I'm gonna remove few parameters from this because we don't use in our user interface. So first I'm gonna remove all of these two. Okay, so measurement is also we're gonna remove because we don't want to use it. Str source will never use it, so remove it. Date modified is also will not use it. Mail ID is fine, string area is fine, category is fine. This also will not use. Instruction, mail, mail thumbnail, tags, str YouTube. Okay, so this looks cool to me. Alright, so this is our model. Once we receive the JSON response, we do some serialization, and after that we'll map this JSON response with our mail response. Okay, and this will be done by our retrofit. So let's create our retrofit instance. So in this model I'm going to create an object and call this a retrofit instance. In this we have a function naming get instance, and it will return a retrofit instance. So let's build it. Retrofit builder, we have to mention our base URL. So let me copy this API for you and paste in here just to make a reference very easy. So this is our base URL. Next we have to add converter factory. This converter factory is actually used to convert your JSON response into model classes, and we'll use here JSON converter factory dot create. Next we have to attach a add call adapter factory. If you want to use the response in a form of observable or in a form of Rx way, then you should add this add call adapter factory, and in this we have to pass Rx Java 3 call adapter factory dot create, and that's it. Lastly, you can build it and return it. So now we do have a retrofit instance. It's time to create our API service interface, and that API service interface implementation will be returning by our retrofit. So let's see how we can create API service. So for that, just create an interface naming API service. Go to the retrofit instance and copy this URL or endpoint, come back to your API service and just paste it in order to take reference. So we have get function, and I'm gonna call this function is search, and simply pass your query. In this get we're gonna mention our path. So path is starting from API and goes up to search PHP. So just use it, and next we have to mention our query. So query is nothing but represented in a form of S, and it will return me an observable of type mail response. Okay, so now it's time to provide the implementation for this API service. So for that, go to your retrofit instance and create one more function, and this function is actually used to provide the implementation for API service. So I'm going to call this provide API service, pass a retrofit, and this will return you API service. So instead of passing this retrofit, I'm going to use get instance function. We'll have a function naming create in it and simply mention your API service. This will return you implementation. Remove it. No need of passing retrofit as a parameter to this provide service. Okay, so now I'm gonna make this function private. We have an implementation for my API service. So we are pretty much done with our API service. Now it's time to create a repository, because we're gonna use here a repository pattern. So in this model, I'm gonna create a class, and the class name is mail repository, and in this class we're gonna create an instance of our API service. So private while API service, type of this thing is API service, and I'm using here lazy. Use retrofit instance dot provide API service. So this will provide you API service. Now we have a function naming search, pass your query, and use your API service dot search, simply mention your query. So we are done with our model. Now it's time to continue with our view model. So in this view model package, I'm gonna create a mail view model naming view model. Make sure to extend this class with view model, and within this we're gonna create our repository. Type is mail repository, and initialize lazily by using our mail repository object. So first we're gonna create a data class which is actually used to hold our UI state. So at the bottom of this class, I'm gonna create a data class, and the data class name is UI state. We have here is loading naming boolean, initial value is false, then we have error, type of this thing is string, and initialize this thing with empty string, and lastly we have results. This represent list of mail detail, and initial value is null. Now I'm gonna create a mutable state flow naming a UI state, mutable state flow, and initial value is UI state. Just below to it, we're gonna create one more UI state, which is actually used to expose this mutable state flow in a form of state flow. Okay, so now we're gonna create one query naming variable which actually holds the query which user enters in our text field or search bar. So for that, we'll use publish subject. If you don't know about publish subject, you can go and watch my RxJava playlist. So we'll have here query which is actually publish subject. So publish subject dot create, type of this thing is string. Just below to it, we have a function naming update query, and the sole purpose of this function is to update our publish subject query. So if user send any query from this function, we're gonna use query on next and pass this query. Okay, so now in the init block, I'm gonna use this query, and in this query first I'm gonna check it is not empty. After that, we'll produce some throttle using debounce. 500 time unit is in milliseconds. After that, we'll use here distinct until change. I mean, if our query won't change, then no need to emit the values, simply just cancel it. Then we have switch map function, and this will give you a new query. Now we have the query which user has entered in the search field. It's time to fetch this information. Now here we'll use schedulers. Now what is schedulers? So before understanding about the schedulers, let's understand the Android. So what is Android? Android is an operating system which is built on top of Linux, and every application that you are seeing right now is nothing but a process. Every process has threads, and the responsibility of these threads is to perform tasks. And in Android, we have different types of thread. We have main thread, we have IO thread, we have worker thread, and these threads have separate roles and responsibility. Main thread is actually used to update your user interface, and it will do this task in a loop. After certain period of time, it will update your user interface, and that's the reason why you will see the updated UI. So main thread is actually used to update your user interface. Now let's say you want to perform network communication, and this network communication will surely take some time to process. And if you do this kind of operation on your main thread, your UI won't update. So after some time, you will receive a crash, application not responding, because your main thread will be stuck. And due to this reason, we'll use different thread. So main thread is used to update your user interface. Next we have IO thread, and responsibility of IO thread is to perform, let's say, backend communication, local database communication. This kind of operation you can perform with the help of IO thread. Because we are right now doing network request call, so that task must be delegated to our IO thread, and you can do this thing in RxJava by using schedulers. So this is the purpose of scheduler. You can simply switch the threads, and depending on your requirement, you can switch the thread and perform your task. Let's see how we can do it. So we'll use here a repository.search, simply pass our query. Now this will actually a backend communication, a backend call. It will take some time. So I want to subscribe. So here you can see we have function subscribe on, and requirement of this thing is scheduler. So just use it and simply pass the schedulers. We have a various kind of scheduler in here. We have IO, we have single, we have from. So if you want to create any custom thread pool, you can use from. If you want to use single, you can go with single. IO is actually used to perform backend communication or local database communication, and we are only interested in backend communication, so just use IO. We have here new thread, so it will create a new thread every time, and this is not recommended because threads are very resource expensive, so do not use new thread. Then we have computation. Let's say you want to process your video, you want to process audio. This will require a huge amount of resources. So if you want to do that kind of operation, you can use computation. By the way, we are dealing with network request call, and IO will be the best choice for us. So simply use here IO. Okay, so this will call our backend, fetch the information, and once we get the information from the backend, We're gonna observe those changes on main thread. As I told you, the responsibility of main thread is to update our user interface. That's the reason why I am observing the changes on my main thread. So observe on, because it's a Android stuff, we'll use here Android schedulers main thread, and lastly simply use your subscribe, and corresponding to your response from backend you can update your UI state. So let's update our UI state, and in this we'll receive, if you can check the type that we are getting from this subscribe, mail response. Okay, so let's use here UI state update, create a new UI state instance, and in the results you can pass it. Okay, so this it is not recognizable because in this update we are also receiving it. So I'm going to call this results, and simply pass this result dot mails in it. Cool. And at the end I'm going to use dispose naming variable and create one more composite disposable, and add this dispose in our composite disposable. And when our view model cleared from the memory, I'm gonna dispose everything which is present in our composite disposable. So we get the results. Now what will happen if I receive any kind of error? On that case, if you want to handle the error case, you can simply put this thing in a small circular bracket. So first trailing lambda, you'll receive the success, and next trailing lambda you are receiving the error. So just copy this stuff, come back in here, and this time we are receiving an error. So simply use here error parameter and pass the error message by using error.localize message to string. And in our switch map I'm gonna use UI state update and create an instance of our UI state is loading is true. So that's it. This is all for our view model. We have repository, we have UI state, we have query, which is actually used to hold the user entered query. Then we have composite disposable, and in this init we'll write few logic, like first we filter it, then we produce some throttle. If user doesn't type anything for 500 millisecond, then only we'll proceed, and also we'll check if anything changes, then only we'll hit our backend API. So switch map, in this switch map we'll see the new query, and in this, using this new query we're gonna fetch information from the backend. So yeah, that's it for our view model. Now it's time to begin with our user interface. So for that, open up a view, and in this main activity we shall continue. And I'm gonna use here composable naming main content, and in this main content we'll receive our UI state. We'll receive the query value, and also if our query changes, we'll have a lambda for that, just to update the changes. Okay, so now in this we'll use a scaffold, and in this scaffold we have top bar. In this top bar we're gonna create a text field which actually act as a search bar. We'll have to pass the value and on value change. I'm using here modifier fill max width, and also I want to manipulate its color. So by using text field default dot colors you can manipulate it. We'll use here unfocused indicator color, which is transparent, and focused indicator color is also transparent. Next we have placeholder, and in this placeholder we'll have a text composable, and text says search here. Okay, this is a placeholder. That's it for our text field. Now it's time to begin with our states, like we have loading state, error state, and success state. So if our UI state is loading is true, just create a box having modifier fill max size, but before that use its inner padding. So just rename it from it to inner padding and use it in here. So in padding simply pass inner padding, and its content alignment is on the center. Now in this box we'll simply show a circular progress indicator. So this is for the loading. So if our UI state error is not empty, again I'm gonna use here box with inner padding, fill max size, content alignment is on the center, and we have text in it which shows the error. Okay, so loading error. Now it's time to write our success state. So if our UI state result is not null, that means we'll receive the list of meals. So you will use here lazy column to show our list of meals. Use modifier padding, pass the inner padding, and use fill max size. Now in this we have a composable naming items, and I'm going to choose the second suggestion which has list of type T as input. Pass your data, and one by one you will receive this data in this training lambda, and we're gonna create a list item corresponding to this meal. So for that I'm gonna use here a card modifier. I want padding of 12 dp from all the sides, fill max width. Next we're gonna use here shape, a rounded corner shape of 12 dp. Now in this card we'll have a column, and in this column first we have image, then we have the meal name, and then the description. So for that I'm using here async image. As I told you, we'll use here coil image loading library, which is actually used to load images with the help of URL. So I'm using here async image, or instead of using async image, let's use here sub compose async image, and in this we have to pass our model. So model is coming it str meal thumbnail. Next we have content description, which is null, modifier fill max width, and its height is 300 dp. We have loading state, and in this loading state I'm gonna show a circular progress indicator. So we have circular progress indicator, wrap this thing within a box, have modifier fill max width, and its height is 300 dp, and its content alignment is on the center. Just put this circular progress indicator within this. So this is our image. Now it's time to show the meal name. So for that I'm using here text, and in this text I'm showing the meal name, which is str meal, and its style is coming from material theme, typography dot headline medium will be good. Next we'll also need to give the padding. So padding horizontally is 12 dp, and fill max width is the width. Just in between them I'm using here spacer of height 12 dp. Copy this, paste in here, and lastly I'm gonna show you the instruction, I believe. Yes, str instructions. Then we have style, which is coming from material theme, typography, and this time I'm using here body medium. Modifier padding is 12 dp, fill max width, and also I'm using here a max line of 4, and my overflow state is text overflow dot ellipsis. So that's it for our list item. Now it's time to use this main content within our scaffold, which is present in our meal search app RxJava theme. So use main content, and first we have to pass modifier, padding is inner padding. Next we have to pass our UI state. So for that create your view model using hilt view model, and type is meal view model. Now use your UI state view model UI state, collect this thing in a form of state which is attached to composable lifecycle, and pass this thing within your main content. Next we have to pass the query. So we have to hold the query values. So So for that we have an state naming query. We'll use here a remember savable mutable state of empty string. Now in place of query value you can simply pass the query, and lastly we have on value change. So in this on value change, first we'll update our query, and after that we'll use our view model and call this update query and pass the query. Use here variable because we want to update this query state. Import the changes, remove it, and we are done with our UI. In this scaffold, use the incoming modifier fill max size. Alright, so now open up your manifest, go to this Android manifest and make sure to take permission for internet and execute it. Alright, so I have executed the app and app crashes because of this silly mistake which is present in our main activity. We are not using hilt in this project, so how should we initialize our view model like that? It's not possible, so cut this thing out. Go in here and instead of using hilt view model, use here first just mention the type and use here a view models, import it and re-execute it by pressing Ctrl R. Okay, so now I'm gonna type here chicken. This is our loading state, and there we go. This is our meals that we are receiving from the backend, and it looks not delicious to me because I'm a vegetarian guy. Okay, so few problem with this image, so let's fix it. Scroll down and in your sub compose async image, use content scale in here, content scale crop, and just increase the size from 300 to 320, and yeah, re-execute it. Again I'm gonna use here chicken. Now this time it looks cool. Alright, so that's it for this video. We saw how to use schedulers in RxJava, and also we'll use it properly with a very cool meal search application. That's all for this video. We will meet in our next video where we will discuss new things about RxJava. Till that, goodbye.